Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are taking a closer look, really putting a regulatory lens on the financial services environment. It's highly scrutinized, as you know.
It certainly is.
And look, we know you don't have time to sift through, you know, endless FCA documents. So our mission today, pretty simple actually. We're synthesizing the official regulatory view to give you a shortcut. A way to understand the three key stages the regulator really focuses on.
Right, that progression.
Exactly. How the firm's culture shapes conduct, how that conduct then creates real measurable risk, and then what specific behaviors actually cross the line, threatening the whole market's integrity.
And, well, getting this foundation right is just crucial for anyone in the sector. The regulator's been really clear.
Yeah.
They acknowledge there isn't one single standard culture they can just impose. Every firm's different, naturally.
Okay.
But based on, years of seeing things go wrong, they're very firm that an unhealthy culture, that's the root cause, the primary driver of these big conduct failures we see.
Okay, let's unpack that then. Culture. When the FCA talks about culture, what are we actually talking about? It's not just motivational posters, right?
No, definitely not. The official definition they use is the habitual behaviors and mindsets that characterize an organization.
Habitual behaviors and mindsets. Okay.
Yeah, it's less about the written rules, more about what people genuinely do day to day, maybe when they think no one's watching.
Right.
And critically, this isn't just like an HR thing. A suitable business model and a healthy culture are actual threshold conditions for getting authorized in the first place.
Wow. So if the regulator thinks your culture is fundamentally bad,
They could decide the firm just shouldn't be operating. Full stop.
that raises a massive question about accountability then, especially at the top. Culture feels so pervasive. How do they actually hold senior managers responsible for it?
Well, that's exactly where the senior managers and certification regime, the SMCR, really comes in.
SMCR.
Right? It was brought in precisely to nail down that accountability. Look, everyone has some responsibility, obviously, but senior management, they have to lead from the front.
They set the stage.
And set it, they demonstrate it. And the big shift, the core mechanism, is that change in the burden of proof. Senior managers now have these detailed statements of responsibilities.
Okay.
And they have to actively prove they took reasonable steps to prevent breaches in their areas. It shifts accountability from just the firm as a whole onto specific individuals.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Accountability flowing down.
Yeah.
Okay, so what about the ingredients of culture? You mentioned the FCA identified 4 key drivers that can cause harm to consumers.
Yeah, 4 key drivers. There's purpose, leadership, the approach to rewarding and managing people, and governance.
Purpose, leadership, rewards, governance. Okay. Now this is where it gets really interesting for me. Based on what we're seeing in enforcement lately, which of those 4 does the FCA seem most concerned about? Where's the weakest link generally?
That's a really good question because, they're all vital, right? But the FCA has definitely focused intensely on the approach to rewarding and managing people and governance.
Rewards and governance. Why those?
Well, we see it time and again in enforcement actions. Incentive structures that just go wrong. Rewarding sheer sales volume, for instance, without properly considering if the product is actually right for the customer.
The classic mis-selling incentive.
Exactly. And then the lack of adequate governance, maybe the board or senior managers just aren't challenging the business model enough or the behaviors it encourages. That's what lets a toxic culture take root and, well, persist.
So the regulator's asking, does your bonus scheme accidentally encourage bad behavior?
Precisely. And fixing those internal systems, it often involves using the data you already have, which brings us to a really practical point the sources highlight. Customer complaints.
Complaints, right. Usually seen as just a headache, something to log.
Yeah. Historically, yes. Just a compliance metric. But the regulator's stance now is, no, these complaints are invaluable management information. Real business intelligence.
Okay, how so?
If you actually analyze them properly, look for trends. It's not just about ticking a regulatory box. It tells you where your operations are failing, where processes are clunky, or maybe where a product is just too complex.
So you're saying really digging into complaints isn't just an occupational hazard. It's actually a way to improve things and maybe even save money.
Absolutely. Think about it. If, say, 10% of your customers complain about the same confusing feature on a product,
Hmm.
You fix that feature. You potentially prevent 10% of future complaints. That frees up compliance staff time, reduces potential payouts, builds customer trust. It literally turns a compliance task into a core business improvement strategy.
Okay, that's a powerful reframing.
Yeah.
So that connection between culture, governance, and actual outcomes leads us neatly into conduct risk.
Exactly.
If the culture's off, the result is conduct risk. What exactly is the regulator trying to get firms to mitigate here?
So, conduct risk, the definition is pretty clear. It's the risk that any actions, or indeed omissions, by the firm or its staff might cause harm to customers or threaten market integrity.
Harm to customers or the market covers a lot.
It really does. Everything from just poor service right up to outright fraud.
Hmm.
And the absolute key regulatory demand is that firms manage this proactively.
Proactively, not just cleaning up messes.
Precisely. You can't wait for something to blow up before you act. You need systems designed to spot and, ideally, neutralize the risk before harm occurs.
Okay, and what sort of actions fall under this? What are the big conduct risks?
Well, the list is pretty long, as you'd expect. It definitely includes things like mis-selling, pushing unsuitable products, or just giving misleading info.
Right.
Obvious fraud like insider dealing, money laundering, market manipulation. But it also covers slightly more subtle things.
Like what?
Like designing products that are just really complex, maybe intentionally hard for customers to get their heads around, or simply having weak controls, poor governance structures,
Yep.
outdated technology, weak risk processes. All that falls under conduct risk.
It sounds great. In theory, spot every potential problem proactively. But for a huge, complex firm, is it actually realistic to catch every potential omission before it causes harm? That sounds incredibly difficult.
It is extremely challenging, no doubt, which is why the regulator focuses on mitigation across sort of three main fronts.
Okay, what up?
First, it always comes back to culture. Senior management have to really embed a customer-focused culture.
What?
Genuinely.
Right, not just talking the talk.
Exactly. Second, robust governance and systems. The policies need teeth, they need to be effective, not just sit on a shelf.
Got it.
And third, staff training. It needs to be continuous and crucially focused not just on technical skills, but on the ethical standards, the customer service expectations. You need the systems, the people, and the right mindset all pulling in the same direction.
Systems, people, mindset. Okay, let's drill down into one specific, really high-risk area then. Conflicts of interest.
Ah, yes, a classic.
This is basically the risk of the firm or an individual putting their own interests, financial or otherwise, ahead of the customer's.
That's it exactly. And the rule book is very explicit here, particularly in the FCA handbook, the SYSC chapter.
That's why I see, okay.
It states a conflict exists whenever the interests of the firm or an employee or maybe someone else with control over the firm might affect their ability to act in the customer's best interest. The aim is total impartiality.
What are some concrete examples, things
Yeah.
people can really picture?
Well, the sources give some good ones. The most obvious is someone standing to gain financially or maybe avoid a loss directly at the customer's expense.
Okay.
But it can be more subtle. Think about an advisor recommending product A over product B, where product B might actually be slightly better for the client, but product A pays the firm or the advisor indirectly a higher commission or some other kind of reward.
Right, and that ties straight back to what you said earlier about the approach to rewarding people.
Exactly. If your reward system incentivizes that kind of choice, you've inherently baked in a conflict of interest.
Makes sense.
And it's not just about internal pay structures. It also includes external inducements. Say a third-party fund manager offers advisors a fancy holiday.
Ah, the luxury trip incentive.
Right, or maybe exclusive tickets or hospitality if they sell a certain volume of their product. That external reward clearly creates a conflict. The advisor's judgment could be swayed by the potential reward rather than purely what's best for the client.
Yeah, I can see that. The core difficulty here, I guess, is trying to regulate human nature, isn't it? Greed, maybe even unintentional bias.
That's a huge part of the challenge, definitely.
So given that completely eliminating all potential conflicts in a business trying to make a profit is, well, probably impossible, what are the firm's actual legal duties here?
Okay, so the firm has to take reasonable steps to identify situations where conflicts could potentially arise. That's step one, identification.
Reasonable steps to identify.
Then they have to take reasonable steps to prevent those identified conflicts from actually causing harm to clients, prevention or management.
Identify and prevent or manage.
And crucially, they need to keep records. A regularly updated log of ongoing services or activities where conflicts pose a material risk of damage to client interests.
A conflict log.
Yeah. And of course, they need a written conflict of interest policy. It has to detail the types of conflicts relevant to the firm and the specific procedures they use to manage and mitigate them.
Got it. But again, as we said, that written policy is only as good as the culture and governance that actually enforce it day to day.
Absolutely. Policy without practice is just paper.
Right. So if conflicts of interest harm individual clients, let's scale up. What happens when conduct failures impact the entire market? Which brings us to market abuse.
Yes, the highest level of harm in this context. Actions that undermine the fairness, the efficiency, the very integrity of the market for everyone.
And what does market abuse typically involve?
Well, the regulator usually focuses on three main practices. First is market manipulation.
Manipulation.
Yeah,
Spreading rumors.
exactly. Often it involves deliberately giving out false or misleading information to try and pump up or drive down a share price for personal gain.
Okay.
What's second? Second is unlawful disclosure of inside information. That's sharing non-public info stuff that, if it got out, would likely have a significant effect on prices.
Leaking price-sensitive info.
And third is insider dealing itself. That's actually acting on that inside information, buying or selling shares based on knowledge that isn't available to the wider market, usually for personal profit. Think of a director knowing about a takeover bid before it's announced.
Right, the classic insider trade. And the framework for tackling this is the UK Market Abuse Regulation, UKMAR.
That's the one, UKMAR. It's really important because it gives the FCA clear powers to prevent and detect these activities. And crucially, it classifies insider dealing, unlawful disclosure, and market manipulation as civil offenses. This means the FCA can impose hefty fines and take regulatory action, even if it doesn't meet the threshold for a criminal prosecution, although these things can be criminal under other laws too.
That civil power is key. And to really bring home how serious the unlawful disclosure part is, let's talk about a specific case the sources mention. Sir Christopher Gent.
Ah, yes, the Conditech case.
He is the former non-executive chairman, fined £80,000. Not for trading, but for unlawfully disclosing inside information, right?
That's correct. He disclosed information about upcoming changes to the company's financial guidance and also the CEO's retirement plans to senior people at major shareholder firms.
And what's really fascinating here, and why compliance teams pay such close attention to this case.
Is that the FCA explicitly stated he acted negligently?
Negligently, not deliberately.
Exactly. There was no evidence found that he traded on the information himself. No indication he intended to make a personal profit or avoid a loss. The fine was levied because, essentially, given his training, his senior position, his experience,
He should have known better.
he should have known it was inside information, and he should have known that sharing it outside the proper channels wasn't allowed as part of his job. He was negligent in his handling of sensitive information.
So the huge takeaway for you listening is that when it comes to inside information, the FCA isn't just hunting for deliberate fraudsters. They will absolutely use their UKMAR powers to punish negligence.
That's the critical point.
You don't need to be some mastermind crook.
Yeah.
Just failing to recognize what constitutes inside information or handling it carelessly, especially if you're in a senior role, can land you in serious trouble with significant penalties.
It underscores the responsibility that comes with access to sensitive information.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's try and pull these threads together. What does this all mean? We've kind of traced the regulatory path today, haven't we?
Yeah, I think so.
Culture sets the stage. It drives conduct. That conduct either manages risk well, or it fails to manage conduct risk. And ultimately, that impacts market integrity. It really seems the path to regulatory success or failure starts right back with the mindset, the habitual behaviors of the organization.
I think that's a fair summary. And if we synthesize the core knowledge from this deep dive, it's clear that accountability in financial services now is incredibly strict, especially under rules like SMCR and UKMR. We saw today it covers not just the obvious stuff like intentional fraud, but also things like negligent disclosure or just failing to have robust internal controls. The regulator has definitely moved past just checking the policy manual. They are looking hard at the actual habitual behaviors and mindsets.
The real culture.
The real culture.
And we learned that really practical lesson today, too, about analyzing data. You already have like customer complaints, not just seeing it as a compliance chore, but as a tool to genuinely fix processes, improve the business, and actually save money.
Yeah, turning data into insight.
So here's a final thought for you to maybe mull over. Thinking about your own work, your own area, what management information, or maybe those little low-key occupational hazards, minor recurring errors, routine bits of customer feedback, what might you currently be overlooking or ignoring?
Hmm.
What data, if you actually analyzed it properly, could reveal some significant process improvements, or perhaps point to hidden systemic risks within your own organization? Just something to think about.
Food for thought, definitely.
Well, thanks for diving deep with us today. We'll catch you next time.